Islamophobia is a made-up word. It's made up by a political movement that wants to exploit and capitalize on white guilt.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali walks onto an American campus. She is speaking to a room raised on a very different syllabus. The first question hands her slavery, genocide, and China. Her answer runs straight through the Holocaust. Then she calls Islamophobia a made-up word. She says the end goal is the caliphate. Two more students take the microphone after that. Neither one of them moves her an inch. Watch every answer land harder than the last. Let's get into it.
What I wanted to ask you was, you speak of Islamophobia and classes like Black Studies as phony ideological things, but I was curious as to what makes them different. What makes white supremacy different, or like Islamophobia so different from anti-Semitism, as there, we did import many African slaves that died in the millions, and so did South American countries even more so. We did force Native Americans on forced marches and genocide. There are Muslims being massacred in China today. So what makes anti-Semitism so different?
Look at the trap in that question. He stacks up slavery, forced marches, and Muslims in China. Then he asks why anti-Semitism gets its own special category. It sounds like a devastating gotcha. It is actually the easiest question of the night. Every item on that list is already in Western textbooks. The West put it there itself. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is about to say exactly that. Watch how fast she takes his frame apart.
Two things. One is, we have reckoned in America and in Western European countries, we've had a great reckoning with our past. We've addressed the fact that we engaged in slavery, we fought a war, we ended it. We had segregation, we had another major fight, we ended it. We had the civil rights movement. We brought women out of, and by the way, in fighting for all of those emancipations, the people who were heading these fights were constantly quoting from the Bible. They were believing Christians and they were inspired by their Christianity. So number one, we had that reckoning. Number two, anti-Semitism is the oldest hatred in humanity, and you find it, believe it or not, across the entire world. What made the West different after they nearly exterminated their Jews was to have that honest look in the mirror and reckon with what they did. And then those campaigns to end it.
That is the whole answer. America had slavery, and then America fought a war over it. There was segregation, and that ended too. The leaders of those fights were quoting the Bible the whole way. She just took his entire list and turned it into her evidence. The reckoning he is demanding already happened here. Then she goes after the oldest hatred on earth. Notice she never denies one fact he raised. She just refuses the conclusion.
Islamophobia is a made-up word. It's made up by a political movement that wants to exploit and capitalize on white guilt to achieve its end goal, which is the revival of the caliphate. And the revival of the caliphate is to convert all of us into Islam, whether we like it or not. Those of us who refuse to do that, we will surely be beheaded. I'm sure I'm on top. And that is their end goal. And so they're exploiting these Western part of subversion. This is just a guest speech, but I wish that at some point someone here could start a lecture series on subversion, on active measures, on asymmetric warfare.
There is the line of the night. Islamophobia is a made-up word. She says that on an American campus. And she does not walk it back 1 inch. She says the end goal is the caliphate. Refuse to convert, and you lose your head. She puts herself at the top of that list. Nobody in that room has a response ready. Then she asks the university for a lecture series on subversion.
That would get you interested in what it is that the Islamists are doing and how they've become so successful against these great nations with this incredible military and economic structures. And yet the Islamists are winning. Islam is spreading. They're doing better today than they were doing in 2001 after they hit us and we invaded Afghanistan. They've got Afghanistan back. They have Iraq back. They have Syria. And these Muslim governments are they're shaking in their boots. They're worried about what what could happen to them because of the Islamist movement, and that's why the Islamist movement came here. And they're exploiting principles like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, and so on. And of course, these progressive movements that we have here, we've got to understand that, and we've got to become really creative in finding a way of preserving our principles. I don't want to give up on the freedom of speech, but on the other hand, on beating the Islamists at their game.
Count the receipts she just listed. Afghanistan is back under the Taliban. Iraq and Syria are on the same list. That is not a talking point. That is a map of the last 20 years. And her second point is sharper. They use freedom of speech to attack freedom of speech. They use freedom of association to build the network. She is not asking anyone to give those freedoms up. She is asking why our side keeps losing with them.
Is there room for compromise between principles?
If I want to kill you and behead you, unless you convert to the religion I dictate, what would be the place of compromise?
Well, I would not mind converting, as I myself am an agnostic, so have no faith. Have no established faith. However, I understand that some people would not share that vision, so.
Go back and watch that exchange again. He asks if there is room for compromise. She asks what compromise looks like with a blade at your throat. And his answer is that he would simply convert. He says it like he is ordering coffee. That is the entire Western problem in one sentence. A student who treats surrender as a personality quirk. She does not laugh at him. She is about to educate him instead.
Let's play with this thought for a while. There's a time and a place for everything. And for some of the people, say in places like Africa, we don't talk about this, but Islamists are active in Africa and violently so. If you're a Christian in Egypt or a Hindu in parts of Pakistan, and you have someone looking at you and saying, you'll either lose your head or you convert to Islam, it makes sense to consider converting to Islam. But here today, for us to have the attitude of, well, we'll see what happens, and if we get to that point, I'll just convert, I will say, are you sure? Maybe you want to get educated on what would happen once you convert. What would your life be like, and the life of your sisters and women? What would they do to the Jews? He has said, this man, I repeat it, he said they're bacteria and they're microbes. And in the video that I showed you, they made it very clear it has nothing to do with Palestine. It has everything to do with them being Jewish. So they are going to annihilate the Jews. Will you stand by and watch that? Maybe I should give Introduction to Islam and Islamism as a lecture series, and once you understand what it's all about, you might develop a...
That applause was not polite. She took a flippant line about converting completely seriously. Then she made it concrete. Christians in Egypt and Hindus in Pakistan face that choice now. She quoted a man calling Jews bacteria and microbes. She said it has nothing to do with Palestine. And the room agreed with her out loud. Now a second questioner steps up with the Sermon on the Mount.
Okay, Theo already started my question, but my question is inspired by what Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount about blessed are the peacemakers. So we see in human nature a desire to scapegoat, right? And you're arguing that the Jews are being there's a movement, or there's something that is trying to present Jews as the scapegoat, right? You talk about two important forces, maybe the Islam nation state, which is like a political power, which is a threat, but then also this, like you talk about this network, like mosques all over the place, and these communities, and all it's infiltrating America and the West. So if we don't want to fall into our natural tendency to scapegoat and just become, instead of moving from anti-Semitism to anti-Islamicism, and our goal is to be peacemakers, then how do we do that? But at the end of your last question, you framed it as a violent struggle, right? If it's a violent struggle, then who is our enemies And what do we do?
Right after
The questioner in the blue button-down shirt wants peace. He quotes the Sermon on the Mount. He lands on blessed are the peacemakers. Then he repeats her claim about mosques and networks back to her. He concedes her entire premise while asking her to soften it. That is the whole move. Agree with the diagnosis and reject the treatment. Watch her answer with a question about his birth year.
9/11, you were probably not born. How old were you on 9/11?
I was born in 2004.
2004. So before you. So right after 9/11, 2001, when we were having these discussions about how to treat this enemy that wasn't a state, but that was determined to destroy us. Some of the discussions were, but we can't do this because of the Constitution. We can't do that because of the Constitution. We can't do this because... And a very frustrated judge or Justice Posner said, the Constitution is not a suicide pact. So I don't think there is a lot of space between committing suicide and doing what the young man here said, is to let it just all happen. And I mean, when the time comes, I guess we will convert or we'll deal with it, whatever. And really looking at and studying openly, which we haven't been able to do because we've been self-censoring, and I gave you that list of all the different ways in which we underestimated the Islamist.
He was born in 2004. She uses that fact without insulting him. He does not remember the argument America had after September 11th. The Constitution is not a suicide pact. That line is Justice Posner, not a slogan she invented. And then she draws the actual line. There is enormous space between national suicide and shrugging. That is the space she wants people thinking in.
But if we were to estimate it the right way, I will say in our history in America, it's not the first time that we are fighting an ideology that wants to destroy us. Communism, just the other day, not so long ago, most of us lived through it. And you call it a Cold War here, but in Africa and in other parts of the world, it wasn't cold, it was hot. And we starved and all of it. So there were very good reasons for the United States and Western countries to fight the ideology of communism. And they developed a number of, I'd say, tools to recognize it when it's applying internal subversive methods and when it's coming from an external position. And we can reapply those.
The communism comparison is the strongest thing, she says. America already beat one ideology that wanted it dead. She was blunt about it too. You called it a Cold War here. In Africa, it was hot and people starved. The West built tools to recognize subversion, and it used them. She wants those same tools back on the table. And now, she is about to name the enemy out loud.
We do have to identify Islamism and Islamists as the enemy that they are and give them the full respect. You asked me to identify and you asked me to define what is an enemy. It's a force that wants to destroy you. How do I know that? In this infrastructure of mosques and madrasas and Islamic centers, etc., they say it explicitly. So there is something about don't listen to me, don't listen to the analysts with PhDs and the like. Listen to them and what they say and take it at their word.
There is the sentence that gets people fired. Identify Islamism and Islamists as the enemy they are. And notice her definition of an enemy. A force that explicitly says it wants to destroy you. That is not a vibe. That is a stated goal. Then she gives the test anyone can run. Do not listen to her. Do not listen to the analysts with PhDs. Listen to what they say themselves and take it at face value.
So does this come down to a propaganda war? Like we just inculcate our children before they do? Is that where the battle lies?
I think because the war they wage is totalitarian and total.
But ours,
and
where do we meet them?
Well, we have to meet, ours has to be total too. It has to be where they fight us with ideas, we fight them with ideas. Where they fight us with subversive means, we recognize that and we dismantle this infrastructure and kick them out of the country. We have those tools. We have these possibilities. We can't just let them spread. And this, again, we did the same to communists. We watched as communists grew and as they were subverting our societies, and we took the appropriate measures against individuals, against groups, and so on, but always with due process and always within the limits of the Constitution. But we can't, again, I repeat, the Constitution is not a suicide.
He asks if this is a propaganda war for children. She does not accept that framing. She calls their war totalitarian and total. So the defense has to be total too. Their ideas get answered with better ideas. The subversion infrastructure gets dismantled, and she says the next part twice, with due process and inside the Constitution. Every critic of hers will pretend she never said that.
Thank you for your talk. My name is Ben. I've noticed an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, especially among conservatives and the far right. They like to point out that AIPAC owns our government, or that the state of Israel, the fact that we give them arms and support them so much in their wars against these terrible Arab states, that this means that we're being controlled by Jews. I just want to know, what's your general take on this? And is there a way to, stop this from happening, especially among the right?
Theo is back with a harder question. He points at anti-Semitism on the right. He mentions the tropes about AIPAC and Israeli influence. He asks her how to stop it. Notice that she does not dodge it. Nobody would have blamed her for pivoting to safer ground. Instead, she is about to answer with her own childhood. What comes next is the most personal thing she says all night.
To answer your question, let me illustrate it with my own. I was socialized into hating Jews. I used to hate them. I used to think they were monsters. I didn't think they looked human. So I was completely immersed. And this happened at home, and it happened in the mosque, and it happened at school, and so on. And then I came to the Netherlands. And fortunately for me, I attended the University of Leiden just as the Europeans were going through their reckoning of what they had done to their fellow Jewish citizens. And I thank that as my re-education. A few years later, when I went into Parliament in 2003, there were groups of Muslims who said they didn't want to be a part of this education on the Holocaust, the memorialization of what happened, this reckoning. They said they weren't a part of it. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. And the mistake country after country made was to say, well, in that case, it's not mandatory anymore. I think in Germany, officially, it's still mandatory, but it's outsourced to NGOs.
She used to think Jews were not human. She says that about herself, on camera, without flinching. Then the University of Leiden re-educated her, and here is the detail nobody quotes. In 2003, groups in the Netherlands refused Holocaust education, and country after country made it optional instead. That is how you manufacture a generation with no memory. She is describing a policy failure, not a people.
And with that, I think, came a rise in I don't know if you remember, you are too young to remember this, but some of the older people here will remember the nasty campaign against the canon, as Western canon, as white, male, and pale and stale. And Jesse Jackson shouting all over the place, Western Civ must go, ho, ho, yo, ho, whatever, Western Civ must go. Now, I think a consequence of that has been that there is now a generation that doesn't know what led up to the Holocaust, that are not educated, that these tropes, this scapegoating, this story, that these stupid narratives that Jews control the world, they don't see, they can't look at it critically because they haven't been taught, they haven't been exposed. And that is the generation after me. I was going to school.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, Western Civ has got to go. That chant went up at Stanford in the 80s. She just connected it to the tropes on campus today. No Western canon means no Holocaust context. No context means the conspiracy theories sound plausible. She calls those narratives stupid and dangerous. And she puts the blame on the curriculum, not the students. Watch her name the subjects out loud.
in the 1990s up to the 2000s, and this politicization of the curriculum and this capture of the curriculum by the woke, along with some of the Islamists, that is occurring in the 2010s up to now. And so I think we're now seeing a generation that's come off with degrees in funny subjects like gender studies and Black studies and liberation studies and intersectionality and so on. And they can't tell the difference between right and wrong. And they believe in this nonsense.
3 questioners, 1 panelist, and not one dodge all night. Every question was built to make her retreat. Why is anti-Semitism the special case? Where is the room for compromise? How do we stay peacemakers? She answered every one of them with specifics. Slavery, segregation, Leiden, the Dutch Parliament, Jesse Jackson. Her critics call this fear. Tonight, it looked like the only memory in the room. So, what do you think? Did she make the case that Islamism is a unique threat, or did the students land something real? Drop your thoughts in the comments.